I don't usually have his number. I should get that from you. Yeah, his number. I should get
It's
that.
not going through, so. Yeah, the phone's not gonna work in here. Oh, you'll have to stand outside if you want to talk to them on the phone. All right, let's see if I can actually switch into. There we go. There we go. You're aware? I can try to revive them, but you see nothing, usually is on here. Yeah, this place is terrible.
His size too.
It is like an unreachable because there are two bars that should go through.
So this blanket everywhere in the state means every lot with a one dwelling unit can have two more dwelling units added to it.
Yes, but it still has to meet the restrictions of a separate law that requires it to be 20,000 square feet is the minimum per dwelling unit, and that's for the LCI. So which is about less than half an acre.
And that's in the, that's shoreland, that's everywhere.
Well, actually, shoreline is more restrictive. I think it's 30,000 square feet. So it's almost impossible to get two dwellings in the shoreline zone. But you can get two dwellings in 1 acre in a non-shore.
But if you had like,
It's only two,
if you had 60,000 square feet in the
You also
shoreline,
have a certain amount of shorefront.
and you have to have,
and you have the surf frontage,
you
yeah.
have to have 100 feet of shorefront, and you have to have 60,000 for two.
Yeah.
So. Really almost, and a lot of our shorefront is grandfathered lots
Of
that
smaller,
are
yeah,
smaller. They're
yeah.
barely able to fit one dwelling, but it would.
All right. We tried our best with Eric.
Yes, and I texted him, call fails, and it looks like it's delivered, so he's not trying to call us either.
Well, if he jumps on the Zoom, he jumps on the Zoom. I think 6:05, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Members of the public? Jeff? No.
Hello?
All right. Any adjustments to the agenda? Minutes of the previous meeting. Has everyone reviewed those?
Think so, I have no problem.
So we have a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of the last session.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0. And then we're on to Mr. Smith. Is that you?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
So I'm inquiring about M17 Lot 1 in South Thomaston on Westbrook Street.
Yep.
So I wonder if I'm able to put a commercial building on that property.
Less than 10,000 square feet, it says.
Oh, yeah, it'd be much smaller than that.
And what's the specific use? You said a welding shop?
Yeah. A fab shop.
I think probably so.
You're
Okay.
looking to buy the property and start a shop, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And that 10,000 square feet, that is the total you can have for the building and any parking lot area that you have for that business.
I got you. Okay, that shouldn't be a problem either. Any restrictions on how far back off the road that commercial building would have to be?
There is a standard road.
It's
Setback
like
for the
33
state.
feet. The state setback's 33 feet from center line.
But there's no additional setback for a commercial building specifically in South Thomaston.
Okay, yeah,
Complying with State regulations is all you would need to do.
so
you
I
would
could put that as far back as I wanted to on those 15 acres.
That's right.
Okay, that's all I really needed. And
It would be
one other
subject
thing,
to review by you would have to apply for a permit with the planning board, and we'd ask you more specific questions about hours of operation and noise and any chemicals and things, like, we would get into a more detailed review process.
gotcha.
On the surface of it, I don't think that there's anything that makes it invalid. I think, you'd be starting from a position of, yes, that's allowed.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
You have to-
that's important if I'm gonna, spend that kind of money on a piece of property and then not be able to put a shop on it eventually,
Absolutely. Do you have
Also,
any other questions or?
yeah, is that 15-acre parcel, would you be able to subdivide that? If wanted to someday?
You should be able to.
I believe so, and the
Okay.
town has a subdivision ordinance. That you could read if you're thinking of implementing a subdivision plan and doing a full subdivision. If you just wanted to split the lot, for example, into 2 lots, that wouldn't be as complex.
Right. Yeah, most likely, I mean, that would never happen. I just, my old lady wanted me to ask, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would consult that ordinance just so you'd understand like what might be involved and what might be required if you were to actually, implement a full subdivision. Something like you can see on the map in the next parcel over there. Clearly a subdivision
Yeah,
in that case, but. Just something to consider. Making sure you understand what those regulations are, if you're thinking about that in the future.
okay, sounds good. Well, I won't take any more of you guys' time. Just wanted to run that by you guys before I put an offer in to make sure, it's something I could do.
Of course.
All right,
Thanks for checking, and
Have a good
if you have
day.
any more questions, feel free to come back.
okay, I will. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, you too.
Bye. Bye.
And
Great. You're up, Jeff.
you're up.
Okay.
Why don't you come with us?
You can come sit. Thank you.
No, we're just.
So. The select board has recommended that the ordinance review committee look at the land use ordinance for several things that need to be fixed. And in the meantime, we've started getting more clarity on what the state has done with LD 1706.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And that. And it kind of sets the time frame, so we have to have it done by our next town meeting, which would be the end of June. So that kind of backs us up. We have to have because it is an ordinance change, so we'll have to have a public hearing 30 days prior. And then we have to get review by planning board and a select board. So we're looking at being about 6 months out. Right now. We started right away. So the main reason I wanted to come in to the planning board ahead of time is last time it got really complicated having an ordinance review committee and some responsibilities that the planning board had to review and chop on it. And so I'm thinking that a better way of doing it this time might be is to combine, so that the ordinance review committee and the planning board are acting together at the same time. So my real question to the planning board is, do you want to do it as a large body? Right now, the ordinance review committee is myself, Gabe, and our CEO.
So we're all there.
So committee is here. So since there is, we want as many eyes on it as possible. I would rather have at least some other representation from the planning board, or if you want to do it, the whole planning board as part of the process. And we can either do it in conjunction with your normal planning board meetings, because I think we can probably get away with that. We may have to have one or two additional meetings near the end as we're going through it. I am more than willing to keep the notes and create the documents for updating the, because I've already got it on Word and it's fairly easy for you to do. So that's one thing I'd like you to consider, is how you want to proceed with the meetings.
I
Yeah.
think the most efficient is to all work together in the same room.
I'm more than willing to do that. I think that's probably the easiest and best way to do it.
I think the only concern that I have about that is just sometimes our agendas get really long.
Correct.
And so we might just have to watch, like, let it be a little bit.
We're
nimble.
going into winter, I think
Yeah.
things typically
Right.
go, you know.
They might slow down, that's true. But if, for example, we end up with like 3 or 4 applications to review one meeting, and then we're supposed to also have this discussion of, you know, we want to make sure we have enough time in that meeting to actually discuss what we're supposed to discuss. So we might want to consider splitting those meetings if it comes to that.
Yeah.
So I think just being flexible with the schedule.
Like today, it's ideal.
Today, perfect, yeah, exactly, but I think having basically adding it to our agenda every time. Discussion, like ordinance review discussion.
Right.
And we just move it forward in the regular meetings, seems good with me. And I mean, I'd be curious what Irv thinks, we should run it by him,
Yeah.
but it's a shame he wasn't able to join. So he in particular has opinions about that.
There he is.
I think that would be in his best interest, though, because he
Hi, Irv.
want to be open to it.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Hello, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, perfect.
You're in the meeting, or
So Irv, this is Jeff North Graves, and I was just discussing doing an ordinance review for the land use ordinance for a whole bunch of different topics. And trying to come up with how we wanted to do it. I think the planning board is on board with us doing it in conjunction with your regular planning board meetings. And doing really a joint ordinance review committee, planning board review of the whole document from the get-go through the finish line. Rather than trying to do what we did last time, which was
Back and forth.
going back and forth, 2 separate committees, meeting 2 different times. And it just took,
Oh, okay, that's gonna be tough if he drops off.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay, you there?
you back on? Hello?
yeah.
text him and let him know that we'll fill him in via email.
Okay, there we go. Okay, are you there? No, she's still gone, okay. We will.
Anyway, I think that's a fine proposal.
Good.
Like I said, I'll just write her an email for this. And get his thoughts.
So this document that I handed out goes over some of the things we know we need to look at.
Yeah,
And so what I would like for everybody on the planning board to do, and the CEO, is to read through the land use ordinance, and if it doesn't make sense to you, or if it's written one way and you know we're doing it a different way, make note of that so that we can kind of get a hold of where the glaring fixes need to be. And the ones I put on here are ones that have already bubbled to the surface, including the last two. And these were brought to the planning board. One of them unofficially, the top one, and the second one officially. Somebody would like the ordinance review committee to prohibit RV campers on the riverside in 131. So it's something that we're obligated to
Yeah,
consider.
Yeah,
and the backstory on that was related to the event venue. And
Correct.
the idea that they were gonna have camping tents, people got really scared of campgrounds, right?
yeah.
And it's funny because I talked to the person who made this recommendation. They said, oh, we don't mind campgrounds, camping. We just don't want a bunch of RVs parked out.
Oh,
Which is really difficult to define. Yeah, I won't go into
Yeah, no, I don't.
my whole personal opinions on this because we'll discuss this
you
later.
bet you'll be.
But, well, yeah, I've got an RV, but I mean, one person's view of what is acceptable and not
Yeah.
acceptable are different.
Camping is
Oh.
camping.
I'll tell you, I live next door to a campground on Waterman Beach Road. And it's not fun.
So I think, I mean, let's discuss it
Yeah, exactly.
in a future meeting.
Yeah.
Um,
The other one is the 1,000 square feet of for commercial. When we put that in there, I believe our intention was building a 10,000 square foot building. Because what we've done is we used to have a definition of industrial as 10,000 square foot building. And we eliminated that and just put commercial, so we kind of melded the two and we made a different definition for industrial.
Yeah, well, we just dealt with it there, but then my piece as well has been in contention, and I mean, I was grandfathered, but it's still
Yeah.
what does it mean?
And that's what actually Rose, somebody said, well, is it the outside stuff that I've got out there in the parking lot? And does that count in the 10,000 square feet? Where do we draw the lines? And I can say that when we did it, it was 10,000 square feet covered, basically. It was this structure, 10,000 square feet, and it was for Walmart, all those big box places, so that we'd have a separate. But that's not how we've been doing it. What we've been doing with it is saying any commercial. So now you look at the Westgate, not Westgate, Pepper Hill,
Yeah,
and they have huge barns and if you look at their whole area out there, it's more than 10,000 square feet. So do they fall under? I don't think so, because they're on the other side of the road, so it's probably not it's a moot issue. But what I'm talking about is the concept of what does that 10,000 square feet, so.
it should be clarified, I agree.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's been muddy water with me for the last couple of years. What does that mean? Because I don't have, where my business is, we have a tiny little business, we have a big parking lot. Like. So if that means 10,000 square foot business. Then. That changes a lot of things. Or
So, and
building.
one of the other things that actually John Spear and I are disagreeing. Right now, the CEO writes permits for fences. Or did, I think she quit doing it
Right,
because.
it says excluding fences.
Right, well, in the definition of structures, it says but there are other things that the CEO has traditionally written permits for that are not covered or restricted in the land use ordinance.
Mhm.
And we don't really have anything anywhere saying the CEO can write permits for other things. Cutting trees that are not in the shoreline zone, demolition. And I think we have that on our list too,
We have a cost for it,
right?
but we don't have any part of the ordinance.
Yeah, so the ordinance doesn't drive it, but see, and that's why John and I disagree. John says if the ordinance doesn't say that she can write a permit for clearing trees or demolition or fences, that you can't. I maintain that the select board decides what the fees are for permits, and that gives her the authority to write a permit on it.
Yeah.
So he would like us to put into the ordinance thing that allow the CEO to write permits for other things.
So do you have to have a permit to cut a tree on your property?
Not in the, well, not in the non-shore, in shoreline zone. you do.
Yeah, I
Right.
know
You have to
that,
get-
but if you're not on the shoreline,
In the state of Maine, if you own less than 100 acres, you can clear cut your property.
Right.
oh,
If you own more than 100 acres, it has to be 20-acre parcels.
But on the shoreline, it's very restricted. But even on the shoreline, we don't drive a permit for tree cutting other than with DEP, right? Go to DEP to get permission. So that's one of the things that we probably ought to cover. And do we want to know about any tree cutting
No,
that's
it's
going on even inside? Or not in the shoreline zone. So those are some of the things, and then this other one. Municipal certification for occupancy, which this new state law requires. Basically, they have to prove to us that they have access to potable water.
Is that this state law or another one?
That's state law, and
Is that what, this one or another one?
no, it's the same one.
Where is that in there? I just,
Well, what you've got is the update.
oh, so the full text has it.
Yes, and so one that's 2003, LD 2003, which came out in April of 2022. This one was a clarification, so you see where it says act to clarify
Yeah.
statewide laws.
Mhm.
So this clarified this a little bit, but it also changed the deadlines. This one, the original one gave us till 2023, July of 2023 to do all these things. But then it became nobody in the state was going to be able to meet those requirements.
I know they gave us another year.
They gave us another year. Now, what they've also done with this clarification, they have also set up a funding mechanism because it was determined that this was a substantial change to the law that towns are now going to incur a cost for. So they're required to reimburse us 90% of the cost. And we can get grants for 80%, I think, of the cost. I'm hoping, so I would like to kind of try to tackle this portion of it early on, other than the little easy low hanging fruit for some of the other changes. But I think that we can do this ourselves. Start the language, then give it to Kirsten, our lawyer, who specializes in these kind of things. And have her review it and then have the state reimburse us for her legal advice on it. That's gonna be my recommendation if that's good with y'all. And what I'll do is I'll call Kirsten and let her know that that's our plan, unless she has some other druthers. If she wants to be a part of it, I wouldn't say no. And I also know that she has several items in our land use ordinance that she would like changed or fixed.
Okay.
Primary one that she's mentioned several times is our land use ordinance, the way it describes non-conforming lots and what you can and can't do on a non-conforming lot is significantly different from our land use ordinance. Our shoreline, right? Land use says you can do anything with a non-conforming use or lot as long as you stay within your boundaries. Shoreline zone says you can't make it more non-conforming. Very significant difference between those two words. And she thinks that we are at risk with our language in the land use. There's a few other things that she thinks we ought to fix, definitions that we need to add. If you look at
The risk there was that because we contradict the shoreline zoning ordinance with our own land use ordinance, there's some exposure to
correct,
allowing things that don't meet state law.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
And we have quite a few things that we have in our in our table of uses that we don't actually have a definition for, so we need to go back and clean some of that up. Which struck me as odd, we don't have any definitions for a word that starts with a T. In fact, we have no definitions for any words that start with anything after S. So our last defined words, and so I don't know if we just messed that up last time when we
I
alphabetized them.
don't think we did like a fully comprehensive review of the definition section.
Yeah, but so there are some T's in there, and there's a few other. And if you look at the table of uses, the very first one, or the second one. Yeah, well, the first one, accessory use or structure. This new state law has defined a new word, accessory dwelling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, which is different from our
Mhm.
definition of accessory use or structure. So we're gonna have to tweak that out a little bit. But the next one, no, I'm sorry, where is it? It's the third or fourth one down. Bed and breakfast, comma, tourist home. We have no definition of what a tourist home is. What that is.
Well, it's a T word.
Yeah, it's
I don't include that.
And so the other thing that this new law did is it highly suggested that towns do something with short-term rentals.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Airbnb's integration.
Right.
Yeah,
Right now, there is nothing driving us to even know
yeah,
if anybody's doing it. But this ordinance is trying to increase the number of affordable houses
yeah,
and making exceptions for how much you earn and how much you were, so that what you, and Airbnbs and those third-party rentals shortcut that.
yeah.
And so the objective is to get towns to at least get an accounting of how many of the short-term rentals are out there. I can tell you that's gonna be difficult on town, because we have tons of them. I mean, right now, we have people who leave their house
Oh, you
and
want-
go live on a boat
Yeah.
while they rent their house during the summer. And we have no way of capturing it. We have nothing in our land use or shoreline zone drives us to even ask the question. I have very mixed opinions on whether or not we should or we shouldn't. But it's something we need to discuss.
I know, but it's like, so see, I'm ambivalent because it's their house and most of the year they live in it.
Right,
You know, it's not like they are just doing a succession of short-term rentals.
right.
So as
Well, there are some that are doing that.
yes, and to me, that's where the problem is. The people who reserve a whole unit for continual short-term Airbnb type rentals. So that definitely takes away from the rental stock.
Yeah,
But, you know, if it's your primary residence and you're vacating it just for a very short period of time, I mean, to me, you know, they should be free to do that.
and when I can't remember what's her name, St. George, she was, no, our state representative. I think she worked.
Matt Black?
Yes,
Oh,
Ann.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ann's the one that came in, and when this first came out, and I wrote down all the issues and problems I had with it and gave it to her, and she came in and said, doesn't apply to you, don't worry about it. And so I am gonna go back to her again, because I've sent her notes and she just isn't answering these days. Because it clearly applies to us, and we are gonna have to make some changes to accommodate. The other thing is that I know the CEO, since we now have a CEO who actually is reading the document and doing things with it, knows what she's doing, has found some things that aren't as clear.
Yeah.
Resources as they should be or could be. So that's my spiel.
So our homework is to read all this in detail
Yeah.
and note, okay, don't understand this, not consistent.
Right.
So do you want the reading to be in conjunction with the shoreland? No.
Refer to it,
Yeah, I think,
in case you get something that's again contradictory, right?
right, yeah. And I think. I am gonna refer that back to our lawyer, because she was very specific on what the language probably ought to be. I know one of the other things that she wanted to make sure that we got into anyway, right? Was right now we don't specifically say that the CEO. Is the final interpreter of what the land use ordinance says. She said most land use ordinances or zoning ordinances do. Unfortunately, we don't say anybody is. So right now, the only answer we can give is get your lawyer to look at it.
Mm.
So it becomes incumbent upon the person who's looking through it, trying to turn in a permit to figure out what the rules are, because our CEO is not a lawyer and does not have the authority to interpret, only to read, basically. And so we probably need to clear
Need to
that up.
clarify.
Does the planning board have the same authority, because planning board permits are construction permits in this town?
Yes, you do not have the authority to interpret, again, because it's not given to you in the ordinance.
I mean, should we give it to us? in the
Yes,
legislative?
yes, I think personally, I think the way it should read is that for those permits, the CEO is authorized to
Yeah,
issue. The CEO is the final word on the interpretation of requirements for those permits that the planning board are authorized to issue, that are the final authority. We may want to put some lawyerese exclusion in there, because you guys are still not lawyers and you still rely on the submission from the permittee. And you should not have to get out measuring sticks and be a surveyor to determine that what they have presented you with is accurate. So.
and we're subject to appeal.
and-
All subject to appeal.
All subject to appeal, right. Yep. So, any other?
But the CEO is the one who can go and measure to make sure people have done what they said they were going to be doing.
That's sort of why I like the,
Mm.
I mean, I understand that we're not gonna be issuing certificates of occupancy like for the building code, but in terms of basic accountability, I kind of like it.
Yeah, well. Anybody who builds a house off Thomaston, if they have a mortgage for it, or they have a construction loan, at some point. That mortgage company is going to require you to produce a certificate of occupancy. Or the town has to write a separate letter to them saying, we do not do certificates of occupancy. Now, we could do certificates of occupancy that are just for affordable houses that meet this. And I think reading through it, I mean, the easy way out of this is in our land use ordinance, we just put a paragraph in that says what they said. And then let the lawyers figure out how to interpret it. I think that's doing a disservice.
Yeah, I think it just.
And I think we've got time. We probably have to have this kind of wrapped up with a bow, like in the March timeframe. And since we're doing this as a joint effort, then all we have to do is get select board approval on it before we take it to the town for public hearing. Okay. Jimmy Jack, yeah.
Okay, next meeting, we will,
Before you do that, what's the first rule of the cavalry?
Go through what?
First rule of the cavalry,
that I don't know.
when riding a dead horse, dismount.
All right, that makes sense. I do
Okay.
have a question for the planning board before we leave for the night. Travis's permit expires
Yeah. I
tomorrow.
was gonna bring that up too.
I've had a couple of phone calls about what's happening, what are you gonna do? So What's
mean-
happening with it?
I mean, you could apply for another,
Is that, well, and I was kind of waiting for, I mean, I've had a stupid busy month, but I was kind of waiting for this because it's the review of my permit, I guess.
yeah, I guess and then Jeff probably knows more about this than I do, but once we've issued a permit. If it's not another permit application or a change to an existing permit application, we don't review it.
Well, so it was scheduled for review. When we did it, it was a 1 year thing because we thought this is the permit for where the building has, or where the business has existed for a
Yeah.
decade now.
Yeah.
When we bought the new property, we weren't sure how fast we were gonna move in. There was complaints from one neighbor of dirt piles.
Yeah.
And being able to see them. And we've worked steadily on the new property, doing a multitude of things, making space for dirt piles and stockpiles and all that stuff. So currently, like, we don't use that area to store any material, really. We have maybe like a truckload of material. I mean, we've had in the past thousands of yards,
Yeah.
and now we have less than 100 yards of material that we're using.
Mhm.
That was the one big contention, and that's what I think because you guys have the town's attorney and, me and the attorney kind of talked back and forth, and I was like, why don't we just do it for a year? Because they were talking about screening was the big contention, fence, trees, whatever,
Mhm.
blocking view of the dirt piles. We don't have dirt piles anymore. There's one big mound of dirt that's gonna stay there because it's gonna fill in our field in the coming years, but it's all grassed in. It's not a dirt pile.
Do you still have all the trucks? Because what
Yeah, all the-
complaint was the noise of the beep, beep, beep. of
But
the
that
truck.
wasn't the contingency for this, the 1 year, it was the screening.
Your performance standard says. That that the condition, the permit is valid for 1 year.
Yeah,
And these people that are very upset with you already. Are not gonna be happy if they just. Approve you to go for another year. It's gonna have to be in
With,
front of the people, so they have a chance to talk.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And I would add that. The permit for 1 year was not just for the screening of the material, it was for operating.
oh, no, yeah, absolutely, but that was the whole. Reason, that's what brought up the 1 year was hey, I'm not gonna have material here in a year, like we have.
But it's also for the Elm
Yeah.
Street, it's for your office. Now your office does not have a permit to operate.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
So what are you gonna do Monday morning?
well, I was told this was a review of my permit,
No,
that's what was talked about with Irv.
I think it does. It does give you give the planning board an opportunity to review.
to reevaluate, yes,
Evaluate.
but it's not fair. It's not fair to do it without,
No, it would need to be
People here.
next meeting. At the earliest, and it would need to be, you would have to recuse yourself, obviously.
Yeah, no, yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
And then we would have, an opportunity to let the public know, schedule the review of the permit. And just, we'll talk about what your plan is, what needs to happen.
yeah.
But. I don't know that the planning board really can can we do anything to bridge the month gap?
Yes, in the process of the review, you could say you can continue to operate for another month or another 3 months or whatever you want to do. Pending our final review. But you're gonna have to come in with a date certain. When are you gonna move to the other location?
Yeah.
And shut that one down, because that's what the lawyer is looking for, and that's what your neighbor.
But I can stay there. I've been there, like,
You're not gonna be able to do that.
I've been there though, I've had a permit for
but
that.
your permits,
But
it's
I-
done tomorrow,
I understand, but I've been there, my business is still grandfathered there.
until tomorrow.
It's,
right,
my business has been there though.
Yeah, but Travis, your permit is done tomorrow, and Monday morning, I can guarantee you, if you're still operating there, I'm gonna have all kinds of people in the office, and I'm asking, what am I supposed to tell them? Am I supposed to come kick you out? Am I, then the planning board is letting him go for another month?
That was, none of this was the
Maybe we just,
discussion of that. It was, we're gonna reevaluate, last year when we got the permit, it was, we're gonna reevaluate it in a year. See where we move forward from there.
okay, so
That
that,
was
Not how the
No.
documents were.
No,
Okay,
it's
that's
not what
not-
it says.
No, that was not, that was the discussion there.
But that's
I
not
think
what
the
this, that's not what this says.
just clarity from the lawyer about what it all means, and in the meantime, can we just make sure we schedule this review meeting for next month?
I would recommend that you take actions. Oh, gosh. It's not on the agenda.
And this is why Mr. Coons came last month to talk about it with Irv, and Irv brushed him off.
Yeah,
Said, we're not talking about it.
So can we?
Well, that was, the
Can
whole
we
thing
do-
was
Can we,
supposed to be under review. It wasn't,
here's
That's
what,
not what the permit.
I think that we can, what we should propose to do is. Given that it wasn't put on the agenda for this meeting. There's no real option other than allowing an extension
Till the next.
until
The next one.
until the review is complete. Right, which we can set. 2 meetings time frame for that?
Yeah.
Is there, I mean,
Yeah,
to me, I don't think there's really another option. Because
I agree. That's
it's not
where-
pragmatic to
Yeah.
just like boot Travis out of his. That's not gonna really help anyone.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna make some of those guys happy, but
But I remember,
that's not
so,
fair,
you
really,
know, in the
given what
winter,
we just heard.
you were permitted to do all kinds of construction at the new site, you know, build this,
Sure.
build that. So are you still on track to do?
when
Made a good
we
amount of progress.
talked and I got a permit to move my business down there, it was discussed, and that's where I'm kind of blindsided by this, because the conversation, I don't know how that's written, but the conversation was, we're gonna review that permit in a year and see how things are progressing. It wasn't, you're fucking out of there.
Yeah.
That's not what it was. And the
But
attorney
this
was
is
right
why
here.
this is why they wanted Irv to talk about it last month. And he didn't, and he brushed them off and shut them down and said, we're not talking about it because the permit's good until the 18th.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the discussion we
And
had.
I know, I'm not.
No, no, I know.
I'm just like, okay,
Yeah,
Monday
no,
morning,
I
I'm
know.
gonna have these people in my
Well,
office.
last year when we got the permits, it was, hey, I need a permit for this new lot that I just purchased. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get down there. So let's do a permit for a year and we'll review it. After that year to see what's happened, and I've since moved all of my material that we're using over there. We have maybe a truckload of material, mulch or whatever. Kicked around, just because it's been such a wet spring and summer, we haven't been able to fully. expand.
I can tell you that the material there is secondary.
Yeah.
And it's almost a non-issue because you're a property owner, you can have stockpile
Yeah.
material for your use. Anybody can do that.
But that leads right
The issue
into,
is
that leads right
operating.
into the backup alarms though. If trucks aren't coming in and out dropping material or picking up material, there's no backup alarms. The trucks leave in the
Where
morning.
we're at right now
Yeah,
is on the 18th. You no longer have a permit to operate
yeah,
there, period. Which means you now are subject to fines from the town per day that you continue to operate a commercial operation without a valid permit.
mhm,
Okay, so where we are right now is you're shut down. You can only operate out of that other location. Unless the planning board does something
Yeah.
tonight to extend that. So that, I mean, that's it. I can't be any clearer than
yeah.
that.
No, and none of that was articulated to me like that. It
It
was,
was in the permit. The permit is
But that-
very clear.
but that's not what the discussion at the time.
Yeah.
It was, that is not the discussion at all.
without it being. the agenda.
It was, after a year, the permit was gonna be reviewed to see how things are moving, were progressing down there, because we hope to move right in. Well, since then, we've had real wet winter, real wet spring, real wet summer. I've had a kid. We're super busy with business, like, we've made a lot of progress. We've moved a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna move all my trucks and equipment down there unless I have a building that I can have a security system.
I think.
Right
yeah,
now, I can
those
see all
are,
my trucks
you
and
know,
equipment.
There has been movement, he has shown good faith in moving the stuff over, so we're gonna have to try to.
The whole thing is like, it wasn't,
Yeah,
none of the discussion was your permit ends. It was, we're gonna review it. I understand what the permit may say,
But that's what it
Yeah,
says,
and I think-
and that's.
but
what
that's
these-
not what was talked
But
about.
that's
at the
what
meeting.
these people know that it's saying, because they have been ready since last month to find out what's
I
going
think
on.
either way, like, we're obviously gonna have to clarify it. We obviously are going to be involved and we're gonna negotiate something,
Yeah.
like, to make it all work. But, I guess the only question that I have, and the question that I mean, I apologize, I don't know the answer to this, is given that this wasn't on the agenda, can we take emergency action to extend for a short period of time?
There is a small risk, but you can.
The risk is somebody
I'll
will,
talk to you about this.
sure. Okay, so then I would propose that we acknowledge that this permit is ending and that we set a 60-day time frame for a resolution. Like two planning board meetings from now. The first one, an opportunity for public comment. The second one, and for you to plan,
Mhm.
we'll agree on the resolution.
Okay.
So I would make that motion that we allow 60 additional days on this permit. And no further extensions, after which point a new permit will need to be issued with very specific conditions.
Cindy, you second.
No. It's fine.
I second this motion.
Okay, do we have, Travis, you can't vote, sorry. So do we have any further discussion?
So I'd like to clarify that next month, so that will be on the agenda,
Yes.
and that will be the review, so the public is allowed to attend to make comments and help forge the resolution. And the final enforcement of the resolution has to be effected after the second month, at the end of the second month. So the people are gonna have to be patient for 2
The
months.
final planning board vote
Yeah.
on a proposed solution will be taken by the end of 2 meetings from now.
Yes,
Okay,
Is
I'm
that-
taking my hat off as a resident of the town and someone that knows Travis very well. And I'm putting my hat on as a code enforcement officer, and this is not right. There's been a whole year to do this. We have many residents that are not gonna be happy. And they tried to bring it up last month. We're brushed aside. We're not worrying
I'm
about it.
comfortable acknowledging that that was a mistake. I just don't think we have any other option here.
I know, the only other option is to shut Travis down or allow him to work and fine him. But I have to tell you, we're
is
gonna have
there a
some
possibility?
very unhappy people.
Yeah, and Terry's gonna deal with them.
For the community.
You say you're not comfortable doing that without cameras.
Well, I've already had people on my property without permission all the time. People walk in there. And if I don't have some sort of security, like I have some cameras set up and stuff, but there's people coming in and out of there all the time. And it's not a secure, like I have a gate. Doesn't matter if people walk right by it. People come in from,
Back.
well, there's an abutting neighbor that when we first bought it, he was down there like 11 o'clock at night. I came down and confronted him because why would somebody be out there at 11 o'clock at night? And 2 days later, I get a call from DEP because he's telling DEP that I'm doing all this.
Don't be, no.
No, we had not even done anything. We had cut a couple, like maybe a dozen trees, hadn't even brought a piece of equipment there. And I got a call from the DEP guy saying that this guy's complaining. Stormwater runoff plan, we're in violation of that, we're too close to the marsh, this and that. Hadn't even brought a piece of equipment on property, which I wanted to be the DEP guy. He was in town. I said, let's meet. There's no, if you haven't done anything, you've done nothing wrong, but just, I have people like this and he accesses my property from behind his property. So he circumvents my cameras and it's not we're not working on out of there.
And Travis, I.
No, I know,
I
and I'm not,
You have trucks there dumping all the stuff, and I understand that, I just feel like. the Public was let down by board. And even you, because you knew it was, you knew.
I didn't know, no, I didn't
But
know.
you're
it
saying
was-
you
I
don't
thought it was
understand
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
It's because,
But again, you didn't say, hey, are you gonna put me on the agenda so we can review this? I expire tomorrow.
I just thought it was, where it was talked about, I thought it was just something to review. I didn't,
But it should be. on-
because my
on the
whole,
agenda.
the whole conversation and that thing was never. I never said I'm gonna be out of there in a year. I said, hopefully we'll have the majority of things moved.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it was gonna be up for review, what we're gonna do from there.
Did Irv send you the performance standards that say?
No.
You never got a copy of that?
No, I don't, I left the meeting with, okay, next year, we're gonna review this. You know, we've moved all of our operations are all moved there. What we do is park vehicles at this location. That's the only thing that's done. There's no work.
Is Vanessa still
It's done.
working out of Elm Street?
She works
Is
in the
that-
office,
That's not valid anymore either. Well,
But
it's
that-
valid until tomorrow.
but that was, like, that wasn't the conversation.
But that's on
wasn't
that
the-
permit, that's on that permit
Just
too.
for our information, what are the steps that you would? Imagine that 2 months from now, it's agreed that you're gonna have to move those vehicles. I'm not saying that's the outcome, imagine,
Yeah.
what steps do you feel like you would have to take to make that possible?
Well, what we're doing is we're building an office later this fall, over the winter, and in springtime, we're gonna be moved pretty much right in there, and this. Our existing office is gonna be a rental. We were hoping, you know, that timeline would be sooner than it is, just didn't work out that
I
way.
mean, yeah, yeah,
And I'm kind of blindsided by all this, because that was not any of the discussions, and with the lawyer, like, the whole thing was, we're gonna push for.
Oh, I think Kristen was pretty clear about, she was giving you a year and that's.
That was all screening based, that was to view of the piles, that
No, I
was,
think there was obviously miscommunication here along the line, and if you didn't get a copy.
I
of the
also think that
performance-
this discussion is probably, we should have it when the public is here
Yeah.
too, because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
should understand.
Well,
I mean,
we're
they're,
talking-
we're live
that's
here.
why-
I think. I mean, it's just, like, we know it's not gonna be a fun meeting.
Right.
Like. Sorry, Travis, it's not gonna be a fun meeting.
uh,
And. I think if we need to. Own. The fact that the planning board didn't, like, we're a month late in planning this meeting, like. I can own that, like, that's fine. If that helps. You know. for
Oh,
the-
I don't think.
It's not gonna help, it's not gonna help, but.
The only thing that's gonna help is if I can say to them Monday morning, you can't operate, and then and they would be happy, but other than that, I think it's gonna be maybe a sick day.
Yeah.
Everybody's sick at the office for a month.
so what happens if I just apply for a permit to keep my business there?
Well, they
That's-
can't
We
take
need
it up
to
until
review
next.
this.
No, but that's completely within my right,
Right, and that's what it should have been done a couple months ago,
yeah, I didn't,
That doesn't help you between
yeah,
now
No,
and the next meeting.
no, yeah. Well, I'm not gonna, I can't not work in my office, I can't, I mean, do whatever the town's gonna do, but this was. Not, if I had known that it was your permit's up. From that meeting, it was talked about that in a year we'll review that permit and move forward from there, because I never agreed to, I'll be out of there in a year. Because I knew how much work it was to move down there. I said there'll be a substantial amount of our business operations move down there, which there is. 90% of our business operations have moved down there. We just park trucks and trailers there. We park equipment down there. We rarely have a piece of equipment even there. And any piece of equipment that's there, we're using it to get material or catch basins or snowplow equipment or whatever. Taken down there. It's not, we're not just storing things just for the fun of it, like. I'm not trying to be there. But I would never have agreed to being out of there in a year, because I know in that meeting. I said that I won't be able to be out of there in a year. There's just too much of an undertaking and I need an office space, which we are building this winter. So there was a big
So I can
miscommunication.
expect a permit application from you?
Yeah,
I'm just teasing you, Travis.
well, it's frustrating for me because this isn't the information that I got.
I mean,
This was not the discussion.
I mean,
I understand where we're at now, the permits up, like, fuck it, who cares? I've been dealing with shitty neighbors this whole time, and I've tried to bend over backwards and comply. And I could have fought that one and extended it, but I gave in, I could have fought the one across the road and got a permit for it, but I gave in, trying to be the nice neighbor, and this is the shit that I get. Is we don't work before 7, we don't work after 4. Occasionally, if somebody's stuck in traffic or something, they might get a truck back at 5. They pull in, back up. You don't dump anything, don't load anything, don't make any noise. It's no different than anybody else backing up anything or a motorcycle going by. No different noise.
Well, I think what you just said is good, and I would encourage you to repeat that without the bad language. And, you know,
Put yourself in my shoes. I buy a $250,000 piece of property to build a little stockyard, then the town changes the land use ordinance
but
2 months later and, oh,
what you want to show is that you have acted in good faith and you have indeed moved to with moving your business over there. And you know, everything, you know, there is no unsightly piles of material. There is much less, you know, noise due to moving equipment, you know, and the truck backing in and beeping. So, you know, again, it's good faith progress towards satisfying the complaints, you know, remedying the complaints of the neighbors. And then you're gonna say, well, there is this, there is this, that. Well, you know, it's gonna be a negotiation, but you're gonna have to do that and do it.
well, I understand.
as
I
quickly as
just,
you
I'm
can.
caught off guard because this was none of the conversation at the meeting a year ago.
Hmm.
And
I always understood you were going to move there, but I understood as well that you didn't bind yourself to being done in a year. So that I never understood that, you know. So we're gonna, you know, everybody's gonna have to give in, that's for sure.
all right, well, we have a motion to allow a 2-month extension. That's been moved and seconded. That was all further discussion of that. And like I said, I think like, that's not the solution that anybody would have really
But
wanted,
that's the only one.
but I don't know. I think it's probably the only solution that is actually fair. The people who'll be complaining might think it is not fair, but anyway, so I think we should just go ahead and vote on that.
Yeah,
Have it all in favor.
Aye.
Motion passes. Sorry, Terry. I would say you can tell them to call me, but I don't want them to call me.
Oh, I can give out everybody's phone number.
call me.
Nah, I don't think I'll do that.
I can tell you, you do have another option. Rather than waiting for your next planning board, you could have a special planning meeting
In a shorter time.
in a shorter time, less than a month.
Well, I would like Irving to be here. That's kind of the.
I think he's gotta be here. When's he get back?
I think he's gone for 3 months or something.
All right, he's not gonna be
You can't
here.
do that then, if you just gave him 60 days.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. So we'll deal with it without him.
Well, we have a
If he's
quorum,
or if he's
but not with 3.
Yeah, we have a quorum.
Right, but you just said you wanted Irv to be.
I know, I would
instead
have
of-
really wanted him to be here, so hopefully he can have a Zoom connection next time.
We'll make sure we schedule a meeting for when he's gonna be able to zoom in. All right. I think that's it, right?
So are you gonna talk to Irv before you schedule the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll send Irv an email. I'll remind.
So are you gonna try to schedule a sooner meeting? I mean, that might appease some people a little bit, so I could say Monday. They're not gonna wait a month to meet, they're gonna meet earlier.
Oh,
I mean, that's fine with me, schedule wise.
Okay,
Um,
when could that be? Because I have a.
you have a lot of meetings.
Yes.
Busy lady, yeah. Let's see.
Actually, next week looks pretty good.
What about
You wanna
August?
give at least 7 days.
7
So what
days.
about August 31st, Thursday?
I can't be here August 31st,
All right.
Oh, yeah.
and the select board had a meeting.
Yeah, I think I heard that date.
For the 30th,
The 30th I can. Are you available?
Oh, I'm available anytime.
I can do the 30th. Travis, does that work for you?
You put a day on there, I'll be there.
Okay,
Okay.
so 30th at 6 p.m.
I'll check with her
Okay.
and I'll figure.
Oh, what day of the week is that?
That's a Wednesday.
Special planning board meeting.
What day?
Wednesday, August 30th is what I would propose, just to show that we're trying to move quickly.
I think that would be very helpful to them.
Um. And that gives us until Wednesday, the 23rd to confirm that and issue an agenda. So I will send an email to her tonight, catching him up on what we did. And I will circulate an email also. Yeah, and we'll just confirm the date by email and then I'll let you know,
And
Jerry.
I'll double check the calendar in the office. That no one
Great.
else is here. I don't think
No,
the 30th is kind of a random day, so no one will be here.
Great. All right, here we go.
all right, thank you.
7:04. Adjourn the meeting.
Travis, can I get you an application?
What?
Can I get you an application?
Yeah. Maybe 5 of them.